For my money, there's a clear top triumvirate when it comes to Major League Baseball's most iconic and indelible postseason meltdowns. And incredibly, they happened in 3 consecutive years. After taking 3 of the first 5 games in the 2002 World Series, the San Francisco Giants held a 5-run lead in Game 6, just 8 outs from bringing the city its first ever title before squandering that lead en route to losing both that game and the following day's Game 7 as the championship slipped through their fingers. The very next year, the Chicago Cubs took 3 of the first 5 games in the NLCS and held a 3-run lead in Game 6, just 5 outs from capturing their first pennant since Babe Ruth had a pulse. Then Steve Bartman interfered with a foul ball, and the rest, as they say, was history. The year after that, the New York Yankees took 3 of the first 3 games in the ALCS over a Red Sox team seeking their first World Series title since trading away Babe Ruth. In Game 4, with the Yanks holding a 1-run lead in the bottom of the 9th and MLB's lone all-time unanimous Hall of Famer on the mound, Boston's dreams of not tacking another year onto their championship drought are on the faintest of life support. Until New York's inability to put the final nail in their coffin made history. Unbelievably enough, when I was looking into these catastrophes, my brain lit up when I saw a through line across these teams. There was a player who actually threaded the needle of hopscotching in consecutive seasons from the Bay to Wrigleyville to the Bronx to experience all 3 of those calamities. And somehow that still doesn't even come close to encapsulating the career-long story of the playoff agony of Kenny Lofton. This video is presented by T-Mobile. That agony wasn't exactly the fault of Lofton, who was one of the most prolific athletes of his time. Good enough at hoops to play collegiately at Arizona in the late 80s, operating as a key 6th man on their dominant '88 squad that made a Final Four run. And at least interesting enough as a baseball prospect that a few months later, despite being a relative neophyte to the sport who for all intents and purposes hadn't played it in years, the speedy Lofton's wheels mesmerized a Houston Astros scout enough for the club to take a 17th round flyer on him in the MLB draft. By '91, against all odds, his game developed enough to break into the big leagues. After the season, Houston traded him to Cleveland, where he spent 5 years in what represented the first of 3 career stints in Northeast Ohio. Across those 5 years, Lofton was a hit machine, racking up more than any other big leaguer outside Paul Molitor. His output exceeded such Hall of Famers as Craig Biggio, Roberto Alomar, Frank Thomas, even Tony Gwynn. And once he got himself aboard, he was an absolute menace on the base path. Having led the American League in stolen bases in each of those 5 seasons, he cumulatively amassed 39% more steals than any other big leaguer. And thanks to his game taking off and becoming one of the all-time great leadoff hitters, he nearly always helped lead his team to the playoffs. From 1995 through 2007, he was a constant fixture in October baseball, with 11 playoff berths throughout those 13 seasons. Along with 3 Yankee luminaries from the same era, 2 Yankee luminaries from Days of Yore, and Chipper Jones, Lofton's one of just 7 position players in MLB history who's played in 11 postseasons within a 13-year span. So his career oozed with opportunity to win a World Series. But while each of the other 6 parlayed their metronomic presence in October into having conquered the World Series mountain early in their careers, Lofton's story unfolded a hell of a lot differently. And the particularly torturous nature of the Commissioner's Trophy eluding Lofton's grasp didn't stay within the confines of 2002 through 04 either. Not by a long shot, despite an odyssey that took him from sea to shining sea. Let's start with the 1995 season that led to his very first postseason foray. Cleveland was seemingly indestructible all year long, easily scoring the most runs in MLB while allowing the second fewest. They won 100 of their 144 games, 10 more than any other big league squad that season, and good for a win percentage just south of 70, which was comfortably the best mark MLB had seen in over 40 years. But the crapshoot that is playoff baseball reared its ugly head when, after cruising to the Fall Classic versus the Braves, Cleveland lost the series in the wake of dropping all 3 games in Atlanta by 1 run. The coup de grace came when the team whose .291 batting average was also MLB's best in over 40 years could muster but a single hit as their bats fell silent at the worst possible time. Next season in '96, Lofton was again the tip of the spear for MLB's best club, only for its season to end in a whimper with just one playoff win. Days ahead of the '97 campaign, Cleveland shocked the baseball world and traded Lofton to Atlanta, which devastated him. But management, fearing that he'd be a flight risk as a free agent after the season, didn't want to take the chance of losing him while getting nothing in return. Though even changing teams did not put an end to Lofton's streak of playing for baseball's best squad. The Braves breezed through the NLDS, but in their NLCS matchup with the Florida Marlins, they lost a hard-fought series in which Atlanta actually outscored the Fish. After a third straight year playing for the league's most sparkling team all season before the flame fizzled out in October, some frustration finally started to understandably percolate. And no one, in their wildest dreams, could ever imagine what was in store across the decade to come. That winter, Lofton did indeed turn out to be a free agency defection the first time he reached the open market, though he ironically used that freedom to sign back in Cleveland for the start of stint number 2, ending his one-year purgatory. So perhaps he wouldn't have been a flight risk after all, and after his old squad won the '97 AL pennant, perhaps he would have made the difference in a World Series where it instead lost a hotly contested 7-game slugfest by the slimmest of margins to those Marlins, which would have given both team and Lofton a long-coveted championship. But I digress. In that first season back together in '98, Lofton was unable to keep his streak alive of playing for MLB's best team. However, he still helped lead a run to the ALCS, and upon confronting the 114-win juggernaut Yankees, Cleveland did manage to win 2 of the first 3 games. Very promising. But that promise got a bucket of freezing water chucked on it as losses in each of the ensuing 3 games followed in a season-ending thud. '99 was even more cruel. Cleveland won each of its first 2 ALDS games over Boston, which put them on the precipice, needing to win only 1 of its next 3 games. Just so much promise lurking here. But then it dropped Game 3, and, powered by Game 4's worst pitching performance in MLB history, sorry Bartolo, but also this was nestled within a broader 21-inning stretch in which Cleveland's arms surrendered an unfathomable 44 runs, it ultimately couldn't get the 1 W it needed before 3 straight L's. And to add injury to insult, he dislocated his shoulder sliding into first, which knocked him out of the decisive 5th game. That's why you never slide into first, kids. That brings us to Y2K, the first of just 2 seasons within this 13-year window in which Lofton's team failed to make the playoffs, which it missed by a single game to Seattle. Cleveland got its chance at revenge the next year when they squared off in the ALDS against a Mariners squad coming in hot off a regular season where they won the most games in big league history. It was quite the daunting task, but Lofton and company still managed to take 2 of the first 3, including an utter demolition in Game 3. There they go, flashing that promise once again. Oops, there they go squandering it again. This was a particularly special way to lose, as they didn't just outscore Seattle across the series, they outscored them by 10. Can you believe the Mariners somehow won that series? I suppose some teams just always get all the luck. Anyway, to this day, there's only been one other LDS in which a team outscored their opposition by more than 5 runs while figuring out a way to lose the series. In fact, only 3 other squads can say they've ever lost any series despite such a high run differential. The 11 Yanks in the ALDS, the 93 Braves in the NLCS, and the 60 Yanks in the World Series. So those are the 7 seasons that led into Lofton's 3-year stretch from hell. That's how much heartbreak he'd already endured. It's at this point that he became an MLB nomad, which was how he managed to wind up in the worst possible place at the worst possible time in 2002, 2003, and 2004. And oh, by the way, in all 3 of those series, Lofton's team scored more runs than it allowed. For those scoring at home, that's 4 consecutive seasons and 5 overall in which Lofton's team outscored their opponent across a playoff series only to get sent home anyway. In 2005, continuing his relentless pursuit to win a World Series, Lofton emerged with all those scars, spending the year in Philly where he batted .335. But alas, this was the second of the 2 seasons within the 13-year window in which Lofton's team failed to make the playoffs, which it missed by a single game. When '06 rolled around, Lofton's team, this year that'd be the Dodgers, snagged the NL wildcard spot before getting quickly swept away. This represents the only year out of the 13 in which Lofton's team coming up short isn't particularly agonizing. He neither played for MLB's very best team all throughout the regular season, nor blew a commanding series lead, nor missed the playoffs by a single game. That leaves 2007, which will be the final season of Lofton's illustrious career and the final chance for him to slay, once and for all, the World Series dragon that he has so many times come tantalizingly close to slaying. He signs with the Rangers, but in his swan song gets dealt mid-season back to Cleveland for his 3rd stint. After wrapping up the 9th division championship of his career, Lofton obviously had his sights set on a bigger championship. There was little difficulty in drubbing the Yankees in the ALDS, at which point Lofton ran into a Red Sox club that stunningly came back from the dead to beat his team in each of his last 2 playoff series against him. Cleveland then commenced to win 3 of the first 4 in a development that is, dare I say, quite promising. It'll take the pennant simply by winning just 1 of the next 3 games. And then, to bring his career to a close, the baseball gods stuck the dagger in and twisted not once, or twice, but unbelievably thrice. Each of Lofton's final 3 career postseason series against the Red Sox entailed his team holding a multi-game series lead. In all of them, his team was on the doorstep of advancing with their foot on Boston's throat, needing just 1 more win to capture the series and having enough cushion that said win just needed to occur before losing 3 or in one case even 4 games in a row. And poof, all 3 strangleholds blown, his team unable to land the plane in even one of them. The tale of the tape of Lofton's career is excruciating. 3 consecutive seasons experiencing what are likely the 3 most epic meltdowns MLB's ever seen, yet not only didn't mitigate that heartbreak by winning a World Series outside that 2002 to 04 window, but that was despite an extreme abundance of auspicious opportunities. 3 consecutive seasons playing for MLB's best team, those 2 other blown multi-game leads versus Boston, 2 series in which his team won 2 of the first 3 games before failing to win another, even when outscoring its opponent by 2 runs per game in the '01 ALDS, and 2 seasons missing the playoffs by a single game. Kenny's immense talent ultimately mattered only so much. He consistently shined throughout his MLB journey, one that saw him show a penchant for signing with contenders, and contenders showing a penchant for trading for him. And in the ultimate reflection of the nature of baseball, he still wound up never getting to taste the ultimate prize. Frankly, it's kind of bewildering that he didn't wind up collecting at least 3 or 4 rings, let alone not even 1. And while plenty of other great players have failed to win a World Series, I think it can safely be said that no other big leaguer, great, mediocre, or otherwise, has ever had a resume of October heartbreak that can even compete with that of Kenny Lofton. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting Secret Base. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to get access to even more and see your name included alongside all these other distinguished folks, subscribe to Secret Base on Patreon.